All right. We should be live on the air on YouTube. Yeah, there you
Send
go.
a request to be in Mean Green Nation's live video. Am I good?
Yeah, you're there. I see you there.
Okay.
I see you on the thing. I'm looking at you in both places. You know, you're here. You're there. All right. I'm gonna do this. Where is it? See, this is why we don't. This is why we don't usually do this, guys, because then it's weird. You know, like this is not
too many buttons.
I have to click lots of buttons. Let me do this.
It's like an airplane cockpit.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mean Green Nation podcast. Welcome to it. Today is the sad day. You gotta do the sad fight song. I feel sad. Like I don't even know where to start with this thing. I think everybody's angry, and I think rightly so, right? You look at what happened, how it happened, and you can be upset. I think Ethan Plinsky, right, the 24/7 guy, he was the only one to interview old Eric Morris after the game, a little post-game thing. And Eric Morris is not happy about that. He was like, we're not big enough. We're not strong enough. He's upset. I don't know. We're in a hole right now. I mean, he did call out Chandler Morris. He said he's playing poor, every which way he did. Made some bad reads. Yeah, that's all true. And I mean, I think we get to that point where like, well, yeah, it's great that you're saying that, but I don't really want to hear you say it. Yeah. Go fix it, man. Don't play poorly, right? I don't want to hear you do that. I guess we can just look at the stats here. There's a lot of bad stats. 681 yards of offense for them. 480 for North Texas. Now, if you remember, right, if you recall, we said, hey, the defense is not we don't really expect them to stop anybody, like, just be a juggernaut. But we want to score, we want to get 600 yards, and we think the other team, even if they get 500, will be okay. Like, basically, we want this score flipped, right? And that was not the case. We were unable to make that happen. And it's been a thing. I wrote that it was after the first half. In the last 12 drives, right, we had, 4 turnover on downs, 3 punts, 3 interceptions, and 10 points, right? So it was like a field goal and the touchdown, right? The 79-yarder Shane Porter touchdown. Some bad stuff has been happening. And you look at this one, Chandler Morris, 21-36, 241 yards, a score, and then 2 interceptions. He played poorly, badly, awfully. And he's your best player. And so much of the offense goes through him that if he's bad, it makes everybody else look bad. Now, add to that there's some drops. I think Dane Moore dropped. He had a drop. He was targeted 13 times, only caught 4 passes. Not all of them were catchable balls. There's a couple where like the guys are just like watching the ball float over the top. A lot of bad stuff there. And Eric Moore said, hey, we're not playing well, and I think that's obvious. To me, that's the biggest problem compared to, everything else. Now, obviously, you say, hey, 681 yards, bud, get Capone out of here. It's hard to argue with that. I'm not going to say, no. Yeah, not Capone. Everybody's done with Capone. Capone might be done with Capone because he was on the sideline cursing and stuff. I don't know. Where do you fall on all this? Are you firing anybody? Or are you doing that fire? You're fired. I'll see you on Monday kind of thing, Like you just want to be cathartic about it.
You made a good point that all of the offense goes through Chandler Morris. Most of the offense, I should say. And when he's performing poorly, the rest of the team does poorly. He is the best player on the team by leaps and bounds, and he's the reason we started off 5-1. But he's partly the reason why we were on a 4-game losing streak. All the stats that you said. It's hard to define it unless you're watching the game, and part of it is that he likes to push the ball down the field, and he's pretty confident in his accuracy. But when he's off, I can hear myself coming through the phone. When he's off,
Just turn it lower. There you go.
when he's off, he's
He's
throwing
bad.
interceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's throwing interceptions, and
If you got that early season Chandler Morris, right, to your point, and dropped him in this team in the last 2 weeks, I think, we scored a couple touchdowns against Army, and we'll definitely score a couple touchdowns against UTSA. And that's it. I think that's how I'm saying your point. Is like when he's bad, he's bad. It's not seeing the field kind of going too fast. Like that first interception, that was like the worst possible thing. Like, what were you thinking? What were you doing? He had grass. He runs, and then he like tries to fit it in between two defenders. Like, it was really 3 defenders. Like, what were you doing? That's just bad decision making. That's not like, oh, I was confused by the coverage. I thought it was gonna be, man, and then they dropped into cover 3. No, that was not it. That's
right.
I'm trying to do too much.
Exactly. It's that aggressive mentality. It's not a benchable behavior, but you want to like tell them, hey, take the 3 yards and slide instead of throwing that interception. It's and when it works, we're excited about it. If it was an interception, it became a reception. There's several other times where it could have been a touchdown. Yeah, we would have been praising him. He's the best quarterback of all time. Obviously, he's probably the best quarterback that North Texas has seen ever. I'd like to wager. So there's no change needed there except for patience. Like I know that he's getting frustrated. He wants to move the team down the field and score touchdowns. I get that. I respect that. But Eric Morris needs to help him out as well. Not put everything on his shoulders, putting him in a hole early by not kicking a field goal. And we've seen this multiple times already this season where we're not going for the easy points.
Yeah, that part was so to your point, right? They are all connected, definitely connected. So when you have a squad, and they get, I guess let me start here and say they're bad, they're playing poorly, but they're not so bad that they can't move the ball into the opposition territory, right? And that's what we saw, right? We saw against Army, they got into the red area, red zone, like 3 times, 4 times, whatever it was. And we've seen them in this game move the ball a little bit. It's time to kick a field goal sometimes, right? Like, so Eric Morris, we went 3 and out, whatever it was, punt on 4th and 1, whatever it was, punted the ball, interception, got the ball back, and then we tried on 4th and 1 a little screenplay. I'm gonna say play and pass at the same time, and like it was all schemed up fine, right? It was a little tunnel screen to Blair Conright, the same one that he took to the house, 96 yards. The problem was that UTSA had it schemed up. On Monday, when Jeff Traylor had his his interview, he said they're one of the best screen teams in the league, right? They had 2 weeks to prepare for a screen game. And then by the time we're getting ready to run this one, they had bottled up our middle screen, 2 of our bubble screens, and some other one, right? Like, they had it locked in. And I'm not saying go completely away, but I was joking on Twitter, like, just get that section, the screenplay section, just throw it out. Just put a big X through it. Let's run something else, because they had prepared for that and they were doing well. They're doing better than we were doing. So it's time to do something else. As it was, it was just awful, because like, one, the throw was bad. We threw it at the defender, hit him in the head. Blake Conroy didn't have a chance to grab it. And he's upset. He's like, oh, whatever. Chandler Morris is upset. I understand the play call, because that's worked for us before. But I think if you kick a field goal at that point, it's 10. You get 10 points, 10 to 24, and you get the ball in the second half. So you score again, now you're down just 7, right? You're going to need 10 points anyway. You can't get it all back in one play. And I understand the desire to score. We're an aggressive team. I get that. But sometimes you need small wins just to get you back on the road again. Like, oh, we're falling behind. You can't just leap forward, Like, let's get some rhythm. Put one foot in front of the other and move forward. That's it. And I feel like that's the part where you have the head coach as the play caller, and that he's a little too focused on the offense, right? I mean, he's talked about this, how he's trying to mitigate it and play more complimentary football, that kind of thing. But I think at this point you can see where he's like, oh, our offense is great. If Eric Morris was the head coach and he had to talk to Eric Morris, the play caller, he'd be like, all right, let's just kick the ball, because he's watching to see how both teams are playing and he's doing whatever. But a lot of times he's there, he has his little play sheet and he's flipping around in it and he's looking at that. And you kind of need to know how everybody's playing, right? It's very much playing college football 25. You're like, oh, I almost caught it. That's it. I'm gonna run it again. Like, dude, it's 4th and 13. like just punt it.
Yeah, exactly. You got to read the room, right? The last 6 quarters of football have been poor. 7, 8 quarters of football have been poor, and so, like you said, go get those little wins. While 7 points is better than 3, 3 points is better than 0. And so far, you haven't been able to execute on those. So get those 3 points, get off the field, let you guys get in rhythm. But instead, you allowed them to get frustrated. You dug them into a hole that you're asking one of the worst defenses in the nation to get you out of. And so that's unfair. It's not complimentary football, and it's led to a 4-week losing streak. A lot of times it seemed like we were in these games, at least when it came to the score, but really it was just, I don't know, probably one of the games that we were truly in it. Out of those 4 games we've been losing, and I can't remember which one it was. It was Tulane or Memphis, but
the Tulane game, I thought we were up in that game. Right, we were winning there, so I mean, I'll count that one as being in the game, because we're winning the game.
Yeah, so that was the one that felt that we were in it. All the other ones, it felt too far away. Even when we were down 10 points, it felt out of hand. It felt that the other team, had UTSA in this case, had confidence that they could move the ball, and they did. Nearly 700 yards of offense against a team that couldn't rush the ball. Before yesterday, their leading rusher, Henry, I don't think eclipsed 80 yards. At the very least, he hadn't eclipsed 100 yards on the season. Yesterday, he got 168 yards and 2 touchdowns, almost doubling his season total. So, I'm shifting, but from the offense to the defense. So I'll pause there before moving on.
Yeah. So I'll say that, like, since the Tulane game, I don't think this offense has been clicking. Like, because you remember that second half, they took that 18-play drive or whatever it was to go down the field to score, and it kind of they're just getting their lipstick out. The 21 play, it was 19 plays, right? 18, 19 plays, whatever. It was the second half one, yeah. And it was too little, too late, and they were always in comeback mode. And similar situation in that we're like, hey, we got a fourth down stop. Now we just need to go down the field and score, and I think we'll be in business. We'll be down a score. And then the first play, Chandler Morris is sacked, fumbles, and then Tulane scores on the next play, right? And so after that point, I don't think this offense has been clicking, right? And that was the last game that DT Sheffield scored, I believe. Because he didn't score. Obviously, didn't score against Army.
Well, That's a good call out because Sheffield's been schemed out of these games. When you're watching them against UTSA, he would catch the ball and three defenders would be swarming him. That's just part of the defense's game plans now is keep Sheffield away from the ball, which is smart, right? He's fast, and nobody else has been able to step up.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. He was targeted 3 times, caught 3 passes for 13 yards, right? Like, this offense is about finding playmakers, right? And so it's not about forcing the ball to anyone. Because, I mean, we remember Dame Ward had, was it 230 yards on 13 grabs in the first game of the season. That was, that was sort of an anomaly. Like, they were USA, right? South Alabama. They were like focused on like the run game, trying to stop the run, whatever it was. And so they were getting picked apart in that RPO, or just RPOing them to death. And we saw a little bit of that in this game where, North Texas ran the same stuff, do it to Dame Ward. As DT Sheffield came up, right, he was catching these same kind of passes. Little screen ones, he's catching, turned it up. Like, you remember that Florida Atlantic game where he caught a nothing pass, took it negative, and then turned it up for 13 yards on that final drive. Like, that was huge. So he hasn't had the yak stuff. And then against like Tulane, he was running like sail routes, like 13, 15 yard out routes. That's one of the ones that he scored on against Memphis. He ran a little sail route again. We caught him in the corner. He turns it up, touchdown. We haven't had time to do those things. And for whatever reason, those are just not in the playbook anymore. And it could be that maybe they have called them and then we just had to go a different direction, which is fine. Like I said, is like you put it on the quarterback and say, throw it to the best guy, right? We're not going to force it to DT Sheffield. Why don't you do that? Because, well, like we did against Army, when you're staring him down and you throw the ball at him, the other team can intercept it more easily. Both interceptions came when we were forcing the ball to DT Sheffield, right? That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't mind it. Like, throw the ball right to whoever's open. In this one, Conrad had 5 grabs, 69 yards. He was more open. Like our screen game wasn't working. Credit to UTSA for flying up and destroying some of those. We saw a little bit of that Texas Tech syndrome where I think we threw it once. It might have been Wyatt Young. He caught it, he turned up field, and we had Miles Coleman like designed to go block a cornerback or somebody, and then he hit, and then he kind of got bumped back, and so the play didn't really go anywhere. It's not because of that, but that's one of those things. Is like, why do you want a big giant wide receiver out there? Well, because it's easier for him to block somebody. You get Miles Coleman, who's a little Slater. It's hard. It's like physics, right? It's hard to generate enough force you're missing some of that equation. All right, so all that said, it's like we're not doing the same things that made us successful. Some of that's by choice, some of that's by circumstance, right? Like the defense, they're prepared for it. We screened the hell out of Memphis. We screened Tulane a little bit. Tulane was a bit more prepared. We tried to throw some screens against Army. With some success. It's been diminishing returns. And this one, UTSA was ready for all the screens. Little bubble screen, the middle screen. And in fact, I think they said, hey, these are nice. Let's add them to our offense. And we got middle screened and we got bubble screened to death when we were bringing lots of pressure.
Yeah, the execution on offense was poor against execution that was great on defense by UTSA. Not only were they prepared for it, but they were also out executing us on that, right? So sometimes the receivers defending, whether that's the guys you just mentioned, blanking on the names now, Hammond or Young or Coleman.
Nobody gets. You got to earn your name.
Blocking on those screens. Sometimes they would whiff or they get outplayed, and so UTSA is blowing up those screens. It's fine, right? You get up and you try again, but in this case, you try to get too many times. You got the you have the reset play screen up, and then you're just spamming same three plays over and over again, right? And that was going on with Shane Porter as well. And I was in the chat I was talking about how the way we play it, we are hoping that we execute. We're hoping that something happens, right? That we're not blocked at the line of scrimmage and we get we gain some yards on those plays. And in this game we did, right? Shane Porter 193 yards, 3 touchdowns. Uh, we're trying to outthink. It's kind of like the Friends episode where it's like they know that we know that they know we know they know, and so there's just too much thinking. Just go play.
Yeah, you make a good point about that thing. Is that like sometimes you can get too clever, right? Somebody says roadrunners, more like chode runners. There you go. Yeah, like it's you start thinking and you get a little too clever. Football at its core is about being, like moving them, doing, exerting your will and all the other stuff, right? It's the autumn wind. It's all that stuff. It's like, I'm trying to get this ball moving over there, and you can out clever them, right? I'm gonna run it this way. No, I'm not. It's gonna throw that way, right? And that's just the essence of every play fake. But at some point, you just want to knock them over, be bigger, faster, stronger, right? Shane Porter was faster than a lot of people in this one. And we got them leaning one way or another. They were prepared for our pass game, and we dominated with the run game, which is fine, right? 480 yards we put up. 193 of that was by Shane Porter himself, and we all told ran for 239, right? Like McGill played poorly. You can see, friend of the show, Patrick Cobbs, former NFLer, in North Texas Hall of Famer, Patrick Cobbs, was telling like, hey, you got to get forward. He missed a couple. Like there was more meat on the bone, and Shane Porter's not the kind of dude yet, maybe, I don't know, whatever, where he can withstand 31 carries. I mean, like, so you need to rotate it. You needed a McGill out there to carry some of that load, because we don't have Ragsdale, we don't have DeMarshon Harris, we don't have Zach Evans apparently either, and we don't have who else am I thinking of? Juwan Price, who's lost for the season, either. We're deep into it, and Shane Porter did a great job. You can see how he's not a natural running back, where he runs kind of funny, he holds it back here or something like that. And
fumble risk.
But I mean, he's speaking of college football 25, he's very much that player. Like he has like a lot of speed, and you get it to him, and if he has to just run straight ahead, it's over. If he has to make a lot of moves, not so great. If he has to be patient in the hole, find where it's going to be, or anticipate a hole, not so great. If he has to shed a tackle 2 yards down the field, not so great. But a straight ahead, he has speed. We'll take that. I don't mind that at all. I think it's a great option to have. But you can see the limitations of that. Like UTSA is basically saying, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. We're going to take away everything else that you do well, right? Like you have a wide receiver playing running back. All right, let's see how many yards he can get, right? Yeah. And 3 touchdowns, 193 yards is pretty great. Almost sparked the comeback all the way, right? We got within, he made it 7, and then he made it 14, and then he made it 21, I guess, right? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, or 20, he made 20.
I think he made it 6. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
He made it a 1-score game, all on his own, sparking that, like you said, that comeback. And it's been the storyline for several games now. The announcers are keyed in. Oh, here we go. This is the 4th or 5th running back for North Texas. He's not even a running back. He's a wide receiver, converted wide receiver. And then they talk about the other guys being preferred walk-ons, right? We've had to dig deep into the well of trying to establish a run game. And you know what? For what we have, we've been all right there, right? We bring in dudes that can perform. Maybe one-dimensional guys like Porter. Yes, straight line speed. He's got it. McGill, he's not big, but he can make guys miss, and he can fight for the yards. But it's just not. It's not the level of, because they're freshmen or redshirt freshmen. They're green. Not yet. Mean green, if I may.
Sort of like a
And you
pale green, kind of a nice pale green right now.
teal.
Yeah.
And you see them make mistakes, right? Instead of he's got a block, and it's the one block, and he can shoot up north south for 4 yards, 5 yards, but instead he tries to bounce it outside the block, which then allows the defender to get to him a lot more easily, and then it's a loss for one, or he gets to the line of scrimmage. So it's those little things that will get 79 yards or we'll get 1 yard. It gets pretty frustrating after a while, and it slows down and it changes your a first and 10 becomes second and 11, and it changes your or a third and 3 becomes a fourth and 4.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, if you look at like the typical running back build, they got like tree trunk legs. A lot of that so that way they don't get knocked off the ball. They're usually low to the ground. I used to have a Beagle Basset. I like my Beagle Basset, right? Like I couldn't, try to pull him left or right with the thing. But if he wanted to go smell a squirrel in a tree, he was gonna do it because he had all the leverage. He was like low, couldn't really knock him over. And so like that's the ideal running back. Like 5'9", 200 pounds or something like that. You're like this, you can't knock him this way or that way. Whatever. And like Shane Porter's not really built that way. And, he's built like a little slight wide receiver, and that's fine. Whatever. And you can see McGill is kind of working on it. He's a preferred walk-on. He's a freshman. Like, he's making freshman mistakes where, like, hey, in high school, I used to just bounce this outside and turn it upfield. I'm like, yeah, this is college football, though. Major college football, you need to run where the play is designed, or else somebody who's just as fast as you is going to catch you, because that's how it works. There are more guys or the difference in speed is not so great, like maybe you can outrun everybody in high school. Here, you can outrun maybe 3 guys, but the other ones can catch you. So, you got to be strategic about it. And yeah, I said, finishing up about the running backs, like Sibley's injured, didn't see him in this game either. All that put to the side, I want to talk a little bit more about the offense, and we got to talk about Capone's defense. So, for me, this one was all on the offense, right? Like, we only managed the 27 points. There was 2 interceptions. There was the 4 went field goals, I guess we'll say. Like, we had some opportunities. It's like 3-4 weeks in a row that our guy, Eric Morris, is like just forcing it. And we already talked about that, but I'm going to just go down the drive chart, right? We had 13 in this game, 13 drives. Last week we only had the 6, right? And we were like, hey man, we had more opportunities. We could have done some things. Well, maybe we're wrong, right? Started out 3 and out, went backwards 5 yards. And again, this was an indicator that the screen game wasn't working because we tried it, got blown up, 5-yard loss. Next one, the interception. That was just a terrible one. It was a good drive, terrible interception, forcing it when you didn't need to. 79-yard touchdown, cool. Then a turnover on downs. This is one of 2 in the first half. One was that little screen. The other one was a little stop route, little zig route. They had a bunch formation on the outside, little scramble drill, and I think it was Conwright coming across the middle, and he was wide open. It would have been a touchdown, but was it Ligon? He got a hand on it, whatever. I was kind of unlucky, but for me, you kick that field goal, right? 2 minutes, you're down there already. Just kick it. It was after the interception. Kick the field goal, take the points, right? That makes it 10 at that time, and it's early enough that you just stack some points and you'll be okay. We get the ball to start the second half. Another basically 3 and out. It's four plays, 11 yards. Then again, you see these streaks: 3 straight touchdowns, 10 plays, 86 yards, touchdown. 2 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 4 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. That's when we're like, okay, we're within 7. It's 33-27. We're within the thing. And then what was it? 1 play interception, 9 plays, 63 yards, turnover on downs. 8 plays, 35 yards, turnover on downs. So all told, 4 turnovers on downs, 2 interceptions. Like, those are bad. The punts, 3 punts, I don't mind those, so much, because we're at least giving ourselves a chance flipping the field a little bit. I mean, obviously, I don't want punts, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like an interception, definitely don't want that. What was I
Well,
going
and
to
then
say? Average third down distance, 6.7 yards. That's to your point about not being able to run or getting a good first down play. We got to make it easier on ourselves and not put ourselves in such a precarious position. Good.
sorry, that was an interesting stat. So you're saying most of our third downs were third and sevens. Uh, and I was going to say that one of my frustrations was that we were playing to get to fourth down rather than trying to convert a third down. And so our stats, our third down conversion rate was 2 and 11. Our fourth down conversion rate was 1 and 5.
Yeah, and so like I get it. Like again, I understand the philosophy. Let's be aggressive, right? And hey, we got a second and long, right? Instead of or I'm saying like, we got a third and long. Instead of saying, all right, let's try to get all 10 in one play. Let's break it up. Let's have 2 quick hitters, and that's fine. I get that. But what you need is an offense that can get 5 yards, right? Can you get 5 yards? And we're like, okay, third and long, third and 7. Let's try this sneaky run that goes for 2 yards. You're like, okay, all right. Now we have a 4th and 5. To me, there's not much difference in the 4th and 5 and the 3rd and 7, right? They're about the same thing. Some of those 4th and 1s, yeah, I like that. One of those touchdown runs was it was that 10 play 86-yard drive, right? That was a 4th and 1 run, right? We ran in a 4th and 1. He scooted for a touchdown. Like, that's fine. We executed there. I get that. 4th and 1s, don't mind those so much. But if the offense is not clicking, and again, how do you know they're not clicking? Punt, interception, turnover on downs, punt, turnover on downs. Like, maybe let's just take the points, right?
Yeah. Kickstart that offense by getting those points. Get them confident in their ability to convert and turn a drive into 3 points, rather than coming back with 0 points and then further getting into their own heads of like we can't do it. We can't go down the field and score.
Yeah, it's like it's like in basketball when your best player is just kind of he's off. It's like let's give him something easy, let's give him a layup or something like that. Take the ball in there, get fouled, get a free throw, right? See the ball go in, and you're like, okay, I do know how to play this game, and I understand. Like I'm sure if I said this to him, he would say, yeah, no crap, dude. It's exactly what we're trying to do. Like you don't know the complicated series of things that we're doing. Like we can execute these plays, and it was only because this went wrong or that went wrong or they were giving us this look, and it means that it takes away these 3 options and whatever. I'm sure it's like that, but it's also as simple as I'm saying is that what we're doing is, I think, a little too complicated, where if one thing breaks down, then we're scrambling, we're looking like, oh well, I don't know what's going on. It's like if Chandler Morris is not making great decisions when he has 5 options, let's give him 2 options, right? Calm him down. Let's say those RPOs are great. Let's have a one wide receiver route, right? Let's do a max protect, and then see if he can't just chuck it down the field. And now, are those great? Is it going to look great? No, but I think you kind of simplify the game a little bit to get him back to his level, right? And maybe that helps. I mean, I don't know. I say all this, and we did score 4 touchdowns, right? 27 points, whatever. Those interceptions are killer. They've been there all season. He's done that all season. So some of that is just how he plays the game. But it's the rest of the stuff, like the execution, that's bad to me. The turnover on downs, that kind of stuff. And that's why I just take the points. All right, let's fast forward and talk about the defense.
All right, I've been trying to avoid this whole time. But
yeah, I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. All right, like, so coming into this game, I said a lot of things are in UTSA's favor. They were on a bye week. They're at home. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for our thing. We just played a tough game against Army on Saturday. It's a short week, right, for us. So we played Army. We have 1 day less to recover, and it happens, right? You feel it like late in the game. I felt like whenever you play a team that's coming off a bye, there's a chance that one, they're going to just be super prepared, right? We saw that against FAU. They were very prepared against us. Or they're going to be lethargic. And that's indicative of a bad coach. Traylor's a successful coach. I think he's undefeated in November. They said everybody's talking about that. They were prepared. They were ready for it. They had what they needed to do. They were ready for the screen game. They knew how to attack us. Okay, fine, right? You can know that's going to happen coming into the game. I don't know why we said, all right, let's go 3 high again. Like, we're going to abandon the 3-4. Is that a good or bad decision? No, it's just a decision that has risks associated to it. Because we played 4 weeks with this 3-4. And now we're going to say, all right, three high now. I don't know what they've been doing in practice. If they've been mixing it in, or I don't know what. Maybe we did have a bye week ahead of Army, so maybe we were working on it then or something. But that seems weird because I feel like we would be preparing for Army, right? So whatever. Like maybe we worked on the 3 high, and then for Army week, the game week, we said, all right, let's work on our weird Army specific one. I don't know. I don't know how they did it, but it seems weird to say, all right, let's go 3 high suddenly. And maybe you're like, well, we've had 2 years of preparation for it. Whatever. I don't know. It seems weird to just suddenly say, let's go back to this defense that we hadn't shown. Were we trying to just, mess them up? Like say, yeah, you were preparing for this 3-4 defense. Gotcha. Here's the 3 high. Oh, the guy's wide open. Yeah.
Never saw this coming.
Here's the other part. Here's the final part of it. They saw this defense last week or 2 weeks ago when they prepared for Memphis. Memphis plays a better version of the 3 high than we do. And they sliced up Memphis at 40 yards or 40 points, right? So I don't understand. I don't get the choice to say, let's run the same defense that Memphis ran, right? So we're not getting any special advantage there. You've already seen it. You've already played against it, right? You've already had success with it. Oh, also, we haven't played it in a while, and we're on a short week. Like, that was our plan. I don't understand. I don't get it. Maybe it's, the only thing I can think of is, like, personnel things. Like, well, we have more healthy safeties, and we have fewer healthy linebackers. And so we're going away from the 3-4 to the 3 high look. But go ahead. That's the end of my rant.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything to add. I think personnel may have had something to do with it because I think we were healthy. We had the guys in the best guys on the field are probably our defensive backs than our linebackers. Both in terms of speed, strength, mental game, football smarts. We see our linebackers out of position, or at least one of them, frequently. But then you're running that, right? And you've seen how you execute it poorly previously in the season. A good example is that middle screen that scored from far away. Was it Henry that took that to the house?
That was David Amador. Yeah.
Amador. Anyway, like you send the house against McCown, right? I think it was like 5 or 6. You vacate the defensive backfield right behind the defensive line. Number 21 is going to come in to play support behind it, but he's late to get there. He gets blown up by offensive linemen, and then there's nobody there to block. He just gets miles of turf there. There's a question.
Yeah. Well, David Augustine says, seems like Capone's trying to prove a point that he can make work since he knows he's gone by the end of the year. Sure, but it's not a unilateral decision, right? Like, that's the head coach saying, yeah, go ahead, right?
Yeah, it seems like that would work against them. Like maybe they had confidence that the UTSA's running game is so bad that they wanted to play against their strength, which is McCown. McCown is a good quarterback. As you can see, he did really well against us, and I don't think that's a fluke, right? We didn't make him look good. He's actually a good quarterback, while the running game is not great. And we made to me, it seems like we made the conscious decision to say let them beat us on the ground while we defend it through the air, and they beat us in both phases, on the ground and through the air.
Well, I mean, so like you look at the big totals, right? 302 yards rushing. 83 of that came on that last play, right? That one play touchdown. And like McCown was like scrambling there. And yes, those are all rush yards, but it's not like they were lining up, knocking us down. Those are rush yards against our pass defense, right? And so whatever, like that kind of colors the running total a little bit. But that said, I think you're right, is that it's not like we were forcing him to throw and making him uncomfortable. And so then the only option he had available to him was to run, right? Which is what they did to Chandler Morris, right? They were dropping in coverage, and he's like, oh, and then he was like running and then not making the best decision with the ball. Like McCown looked comfortable running. Like there was a couple of times we brought pressure, we got to him, we got a couple sacks, I think. But then there was one we had him, and he rolls out, and then he just kind of strolls to nowhere, right? Like he was even kind of like talking a little mess. He was like strolling to the sideline and kind of holding the ball out casually, like they're not going to touch me. Whatever, like he threw for 379. And I think that's the part where you're like, he had time, and it was the same little crossing routes to Amador, to Dishman, their other tight end, and they have like one other tight end that it's like Overmeyer, that guy. They were doing the same thing, little over route, little shallow crosses, little quick outs if they had to. And so it's not like he was under pressure. When we dropped with 8 in coverage, we just couldn't cover that. And if you're like, oh, what if you go back to our game against Memphis, some of those 3rd and longs or 3rd and whatevers that we got busted against was like Colin Lewis against their Blenkumpsy, that dude, number 0, where he just got loose on a crossing route and we couldn't find it. We have trouble with those. And then you've talked about at least one of our linebackers having trouble in coverage. And yeah, you can see it again. You're like, tight end got free. Like you're dropping back into coverage, but you're kind of stumbling. You don't look smooth. You're not reading the play. If you see a tight end coming at you, he's either going behind you, which the case is fine. It's not your thing. Like if he's going deep, or he's going to cross through you. So match up to him is what you want to do. And maybe that's technique. Maybe it's linebacker coaching, whatever. It has the effect of, hey, first down, UTSA. So it doesn't matter whose fault it was, really. It's just like, and that could be, like I said, to Capone's defense, if we're like, well, he can draw it up, but if they can't execute it, then what do you want him to do? Like, and he can teach it, and maybe they get improved and whatever. I don't know. I get it. He was apparently frustrated, and he is frustrated, and maybe he's like, look, I want to go down with my ship. I'm going to play the defense I believe in. And we're gonna do this stuff because I like to dial up some exotic blitzes and this, that, and the other, and I think we can get to them. Whatever. We are missing some dudes. I didn't see Javen Anderson out there. We had a lot of Colin Lewis. We had a lot of Quentin Hammond. Those guys are young dudes, underclassmen. I've been saying this a long time, is that anytime you see a guy look confused or like a little slow to react, it's probably because he's an underclassman, right? That you see some stuff you haven't seen before, or the game's moving a little bit faster than you expect, whatever, it's probably because you're underclassmen. Everybody that's played well for us defensively is an upperclassman or a special player, right? Brian Nelson, interception. He's done well. They were like, oh, he's our best cover corner. He looked like it, right? A couple times they tried to throw it deep on him, and he was step for step with the dude, turned, and almost had a second interception of the game. There's a lot of good, like Jaden Hill. He had 11 tackles. He's a 6-year player. Was it Jalen Smith? He's an upperclassman. Was it Jalen Brown? He had 8 tackles. He's an upperclassman. Like Rod Brown, upperclassman. All these dudes that played well, that you're like, this guy, if they could be like that dude, Shane Witter, he's been playing well. They're all upperclassmen. And so everybody that's been struggling, they're developing. They're in their first or second year. Some people like Taylor Starling played okay, last couple of weeks. He's been swapping with Nelson. Next season, it's going to be Nelson and Starling, and I think that's fine because they have so much experience now. They'll be developed, and I feel like they're going to give us a lot of good. Remember Tejada when he played his redshirt freshman year, whatever it was here, and we're like, oh, he's good, but then he makes some freshman mistakes, right? And then he turned into one of the best cover corners in the league. It takes time. It takes time.
It does, but a guy like Tejada. Well, I'm agreeing with you. It
Yeah.
takes time to develop in a great corner, but Tejada has those special abilities that allows him to overcome some of the mistakes he made when the ball is in the air.
Like the mistakes,
Uh,
like being 5'8", that mistake.
exactly. Starling, I do like. Starling's a great player, but you get frustrated with him when he got beat by that tight end on that touchdown, right? Those little mistakes they add up across the whole game, right? I'm not going to be mad at him for one touchdown,
Yeah.
but when it comes to the rest of the team, and making those individual mistakes, whether that's a penalty, broken coverage, not identifying the right coverage, or the play as it's unfolding, that adds up to 700 yards and 50 points, right? It's unacceptable. And then with to your point about Capone wanting to go down with the ship with his defense, I don't know if that's exactly the case, but you shake what your mama gave you, right? You have a team that is not executing the three high very well. So why do you go back to it? If you keep getting burned playing that defense, why don't you make adjustments and use the personnel? Or maybe it's not the personnel. You scheme it in a way that you're trying to expose yourself less, right? You're not going to eliminate your issues. You're small or slower than the other players, um, but at least you can give your defense a chance to bend and not break. This whole game we were you know bend 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 bend, but it was 98 yards of bending and then they score. And that's you've seen that multiple drives, right? We tried, like we've said, we're a bend and don't break, but we have been breaking after bending for 80 yards every several drives per game. It's exhausting. You're trying to support a team. You're trying to justify the decision making, but at a certain point, like you see it unfold, and we've talked about this all season long. Like I see what he's trying to do. I respect it. I think it could work, but we don't have the personnel for it, or I'm seeing our young players develop. Let's put him in a position to succeed and not put him on an island, right? And same goes on offense, right? Wes Chandler Morris targeting the best corner on UTSA that led to a couple interceptions. When he goes out, target that guy, the backup corner. Why aren't we doing that? Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
digressing.
I think you make a good point, and at least David Augustine agrees with you. It's like here's a, I've studied a lot of this or watched a lot of this and followed a lot of this, and I understand, like for any coaches or former players out there, that it's not as simple as just call a play defensively. Like every play has reads, and then everything fits together, right? So you heard Eric Morris talk about like run fits and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it changes the responsibilities if you have another guy here or another guy there. Like, how are you going to defend the whole breadth of an offense's attack, right? Because you have an inside zone. Who does what, right? It starts with the nose. You go here, you're this, you're A gap, you're B gap, you're C gap, you're D. What happens to the motion? How do we defend that, right? Who gets the third receiver? What happens if we're doing this? And then how many coverages can you play off of that, right? Can we play cover 4 with this one? Can we play cover 3? What are our checks, right? What do we do against bunch formations? What do we do against these? Like all of those things, you want them to be natural and almost instant, right? Hey, they're lining up, back away. That means I'm here, I slide a little bit, and I attack this way, right? Now you can find the old Skladany, like coaching the 4-3 or 4-2-5 one, and he talks about that. Like first thing we do when we line up, we identify where the back is, right? Is he at 0? Is he at -1? Is he at +1? Like basically, where is he aligned to the quarterback? And that changes where the defensive end lines up, right? And it changes the call for the will linebacker that's behind him, because he knows, okay, if he goes in and I go this way, or it changes the way they rotate. If the guy comes over and we have a crack and replace, if I get cracked and I'm the safety, then I know that I have this replacement here. Okay, so you got to teach all of that stuff, because you got to rep it, you got to see it, you got to do it, and it has to be smooth, right? Like, hey, this guy steps, I know I go this way. When it works, it looks super smooth, and you're like, wow, they're just swarming defense. When it doesn't work, you leave a second. They're thinking, they're like, oh, I'm supposed to replace. And then what should have been a 9-yard gain becomes, a 5-yard gain. And those add up. So, like I said, it's like, I understand that any kind of defense is teaching, right? And this is why I know that they went to the 3-4, because it was so similar. Like, you just teach a linebacker some of the rules, and they're limited with some of the other things. But to your point, right? Like, you're either not teaching it, or you just don't have the guys to play it, and so you got to make a choice. And that's the whole thing about the three high. It was born out of the fact that I forget the guy's name now, but the defensive coordinator at Iowa State was having a hard time running the 4-2-5. Like, what they were doing wasn't working. And so then Matt Campbell was like, all right, let's do something where we have more defensive backs out here and we're still solid against the run. So they switched to a 3 high, and with success, they were able to do some things. And the problem in there, again, problem is that has since been seen and analyzed, and I don't want to say figured out, but offenses have more solutions to the 3 high than they did before. They're like, hey, our immediate check is run at it, but then they're stopping that run. You're like, well, okay, it's not working. Now you're like, okay, we know what we can do against it, and we know how we can stress it. So it's not like some magic formation. You still got to teach it, and I think there are weaknesses on it. You're putting a lot of light dudes out there.
Yeah. I'm championing the bit at several different points you made.
Champ away.
So with Capone, right? He was a defensive backs coach. He knows how to recruit defensive backs. Obviously, we brought some really good guys in for North Texas, and that's why we have more of them on the field than we do linebackers. We brought a guy in, Capone, that was pretty good at bringing in defensive backs, and then we made him a defensive coordinator to run that defense. We're paying him buku bucks for doing that when he had never had any experience previously, right? And we've seen this over and over again play out at North Texas, and you've seen that with Phil Bennett. We've seen that with Skladany. That's as far back as my memory will go. When we're failing at defense, and then we bring in an old retread to kind of settle things down. And I don't understand why guys, head coaches don't see that. Like a fresh head coach, right? The last head coaching stint was at was it Division II or FCS school? FCS school, and you're not bringing in an experience to settle things down, especially on defense. You're bringing in a brand new guy who's never done this before. Maybe he shows promise, but now we've stunted our growth defensively for several years now, and we're gonna have to replace linebackers somehow or improve linebacker play somehow when he's gone.
I think was it I can't remember who it was, but somebody they had a nice tweet, and I want to give them credit, but I don't remember what it was. But they said, I think that offensive coordinators are like philosophers and defensive coordinators are like teachers. And because I think their discussion was about like Vic Fangio and some of the other guys in the NFL, is that you kind of want to sometimes have older coordinators because there's a lot of teaching involved, and you want to make it simple, where like the offenses are like doing a bunch of crazy stuff, like we're gonna line up here, we're gonna get it, and then that's kind of the dynamic you see. Now I think there's obviously exceptions to the rules, like Zach Orr, right? Former North Texas Mean Green player, is doing well. He's youngish, relatively young, coordinating the Baltimore Ravens defense, right? So whatever. I think, to your point, having an experienced guy on the defensive staff would help teach some things, right? Because like maybe because Matt Capone would be whatever, and he has experience, and I'm sure he's a good teacher, and this is all relative to everything else. Is that maybe there's another guy to be like, yeah, the way that we teach it, 15 years ago was this way, and that would maybe help unlock some insight or make a guy better, help him out just a little bit. Now, this old coach, like 55-year-old guy maybe can't relate to the players as easily, and maybe he's not so great on the recruiting trail, this, that, and the other. But I think having somebody there that just has some experience and that can kind of change the way that we're teaching some things to make it easier to absorb is great. Now, all of that said, I do think that there is a risk. There's a couple of things. These are your choices, right? Because I don't think there's always a yes or no, and like one is right, one's wrong. One's maybe more right for certain circumstances, and one's maybe more wrong for certain circumstances. Well, lay them out. Because I know I feel like I'm Matt Capone arguing for my job, and you're like, no, but
Wrong.
But here's the thing, right? Is that if you fire Matt Capone, right? Some players might not be happy. You might lose some of those relationships. You're gonna lose some of those relationships. You're gonna lose some of the recruits that are coming in to play in the defense or to build it up, that kind of thing. You're gonna lose some of the development that you've already built up with these guys, right? I can see where you can have a very good defense, a very solid defense next season, simply for the fact that a lot of key personnel are going to be in the system for the third season, right? Either it's, freshman, redshirt freshman, didn't play a lot, played a lot, went through the summer. And so they're just going to be better, right? Having been in the system, they're just going to be better. And you look at Army, right? Everybody's talking about Army, like how good they've been. A lot of it is because they just haven't changed, right? They stayed the same. They built their program. They know what they want to do, and they just keep doing it. Right?
But the expectations are different.
Yeah, sure.
At a program like Army.
Yeah.
Right. When they perform, it's like, dude, that's fun.
Yes, I mean, sure, but I mean, it's not like we don't have a national following, right? When we go to a stadium, nobody's like, oh, North Texas, Mean Green are here. My uncle was a North Texas. It's different, but there's a national brand, and they have a little bit of there's pressure at Army in a different way, I think. They have to play one nationally televised game a year, where like it's like a referendum on the program, right? Like people care.
We're not a national.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Army. I just want to make this point that there's value in building up your system, right? And that Capone, for his part, he's using a lot of young guys. Now, I think that the thing is like, okay, well, that's all the good. It's the risk of firing him, right? Well, what's the risk of keeping him? To your point, right? Is that you're losing a lot of fan base, right? People are frustrated with Capone. They're like, come on, dude. Like, there's some people don't even want to hear this. Like, all the part where we're talking about this, they're like, yeah, all right. So David Augustin, he's making a point. We got 77 new guys. Yes. There's a good portion of them that are playing on the team. Like B.J. Allen was pretty bad, right? I think he was also on special teams, and he dropped that one, or it might have been a different 30, double number thing. But he took a bad ankle out there. There's a few dudes for Capone that didn't even get to play. Like Ashim Young, who was supposed to be pretty good. The other guy, Sproles, just, he got himself out of the game. Some of the 77 is spread amongst both sides of the ball, all sides of the ball. But back to what I was saying. You keep Capone, you're going to have a hard time convincing fans to give money, to come show up at the games, to have patience, to not yell at people on Twitter or X or Blue Sky or whatever the new thing is, or the podcast or whatever, because they're not really on board. And, they have a great argument, because ultimately you look at the rankings and say, hey, we were the worst defense statistically last season. This year, we had some improvement, but it's not good enough, right? 600 yards to the rival, it doesn't matter, right? Sure, the offense has put you in some poor positions here and there, but 600 yards, 48 points, like you get some stops. You did okay against Army, but Tulane just walked up and down the field against you. Like all of that does matter, and it could be that you bring in a guy who runs the same kind of defense, a very similar defense, and he just teaches it better, right? Maybe he just calls the plays better. Maybe he signals better. I don't know. Here is a point about those the screens that you're talking about, right? The guy just 24 is there, and he has to block. He has to power through the whole offensive line to stop Amador from scoring. That's the nature of a screen. They dialed up some of those screens every time we had like a big blitz coming, and that tells me that it's either one, they just know what we're gonna do. They have a bead on our they have a bead on our play calling, or they were seeing our calls. Right? They signaled, we're signaling, and then somebody goes, oh, they're doing the thing. Check to a screen, or whatever. And all those have the same result, as that we're not coordinating our defense well enough to bottle that up. Is it coaching?
Yeah, it happened more than once.
Yeah. Is it coaching? Like, hey, I've taught you well enough what to do here. Is it game planning? Like, hey, be prepared. They'll do this. Is it play calling? Like, here's a good play for this moment. Or is it signaling? Like, hey, run, do the big blitz. And they're like, they're going to do the big blitz. And then, like, all those things are part of the coaching and coordinating. And so I look to Eric Morris on that. Like, dude, this is, again, you got to pay attention. How are we signaling, and what's happening? What's going on? Do we have a robust one? If you remember that Michigan guy, what's his name, Connor Stallions, he was on, was it Bussin' with the Bros or something? He talked about that. He said it was very good, ECU. So you can be good at ECU. Where you learn the still signs? Navy. Like, it happens here at the AAC level.
You covered a lot of ground there, and
Thanks.
I think
I'm a sideline to sideline kind of podcaster,
Well, and let's take that concept, but let's go vertical, right? From defensive line to linebackers to defensive backs.
Yeah.
And the defensive line getting pressure, but they have a hard time getting to the quarterback or penetrating enough to blow up a play. It'll happen a few times a game. That's great. But more often than not, we're losing that battle on the offensive line, against the offensive line. All right, what do you got to do there? All right, well, you can't fault the defense for allowing the quarterback to scramble around. Somebody's going to get open and deliver a pass. I'm not going to be too upset about that. It happens. Linebackers have been up and down. Yes, a lot of them are good, and they have a volume of tackles, but a lot of times I keep seeing the same mistake. Even though they've been here 2 seasons, right? You're talking about getting to the 3rd season. They're making the same mistakes that they were making on day one, over pursuing, over attacking an alley, and allowing the running back or whomever to get around them, and then they're chasing. And the best thing they can do is put out an arm to slow them down, and then they hurt themselves. And it's frustrating to keep seeing that over and over again. And then schematically, you're sending 6 guys without a backup plan behind them. The offensive coordinators are seeing this, and they're scheming up those middle screens or
I'll say that every time you do a blitz, you have a plan, and a lot of it is just cover zero behind it, or you sometimes do like little fire zone things where guys are just supposed to be there. I mean, but those are risks, right? And there are perfect plays against any one of those things. Like, this is why you run some of those middle screens it's because it's a change up against whatever you're doing. Because if you think, hey, I'm designing a screen, they're gonna go max protect, but when the guys just kind of go by and you're like, hey, we got too good at pressure, right? It's working out too well. Here's a screen right behind your head, and
yeah, and credit to the opposing offense to identify that and exploit it. But it happens a lot. We get exploited a lot. They're able to see, identify, and execute against these, and we're losing those one-on-one battles on the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, right? Like, I talked about this margin for error thing. I felt like UTSA was going to give us a margin for error. They're not that good, and you could see that, right? They dropped 2 passes deep. Now, it's bad that they were wide ass open, right? That was a part there. I think somebody was blaming Brian Nelson for that. Those are safeties, because I saw Hill there and I saw Quentin Hammonds. And Hill's we mentioned this early because he's been playing well, but he like steps forward. He's like a strong safety, in the classic sense, but he's not great in coverage. Like he's always staring in the backfield, and there's a risk that he'll get beat over the top. And he was a step slow. But whatever, it was a drop. And it's like against Memphis that won the deep post that was against like Colin Lewis. Against Tulane, I think it was against Colin Lewis again because you were complaining about that. You're like, what is he doing? He's just like what? Yeah, that there's a lot of bad technique back there, and I mean that equals a touchdown, right? It doesn't matter if you put a freshman out there. They don't say, okay, well this touchdown only counts 4 points. No, it's still 6. It still counts the same. You got to stop it, and we have a lot of weaknesses. And it doesn't matter if our defensive line is winning a couple battles if a guy's wide open. If the tight end is scooting past their linebacker and is wide open. Or, we don't wrap up right away or whatever the case may be.
So my point there is that while Capone may be bringing in some good players in the defensive backfield, the scheming has not been great, trying to force something to happen. He's not identifying where his weaknesses are and trying to hide those weaknesses. We're getting exploited all the time. And teaching. You were harping on teaching earlier, and I feel like it's not happening. It's not either they're not understanding it or, last week or the week before, it's 3rd and 5. He's yelling about, hey, it's 3rd and 5. Why aren't you pressuring the receiver? And is that something after 2 years that you should be yelling about? Shouldn't the corner automatically know, oh, yeah, 3rd and 5, I got to press?
Yeah, and that's the part where, like, that yelling in the game, like, I get it. It's high emotion. I don't really mind yelling in the game. I think everybody yells in the game. I mean, I play rec league. I end up yelling at somebody. It's like, dude, we're guarding here. Step forward. Whatever the case may be. But I think the other part is that, like, that has to be a change up, and sometimes that's to get people motivated if they're kind of in their own head. They're thinking too much. Like, hey, you get them to snap out of it. And they're like, what? And they're like, just do whatever. Is that just yelling at everybody is not a good coaching technique by itself. Like, if that's your strategy. I mean, like I say, I personally have a lot of cushion there. I don't mind. I think sometimes getting yelled at is good. I always tell the stories. Like, one of my friends was not, like, I was trying to give him a lot of positive encouragement. We were playing rec league, and I was like, yeah, just keep. Then later I was like, what are you even doing, dude? Like, why are you even out here? And then all of a sudden he just becomes LeBron James, and like, I mean, like, sometimes you need to be a little. Yeah, I mean.
Should that have been a teaching moment? It's the 3rd and 5. I mean, it's not talking about.
Yes,
like,
that's what I'm saying. Is that, like, if your corner doesn't know how he should line up on 3rd and 5, then the problem wasn't in that moment, right? Right. And it's also not like, what are you doing? The problem is, are we teaching that in the offseason, in the position group meetings? Are we communicating that well, right? Like, is it any of those things? And then that's the other part too, is that, like, okay, it could be just a guy thing. It could have been, I think it was Taylor Starling at the time. It could have been just him. And so you later on, like, what were we thinking here? What's going on? Let's correct that next time, right? Let's not make that mistake again. We need to know time and score. That's what we need. Everybody needs to learn, right? Because if the defense is not doing it right, the players are not executing right, your job as a coach is to prepare them for that, right? So yeah, everything that's still happening that you say, hey, this was a problem early and now it's a problem again late, as a coaching thing. But it's not only a coaching thing, because there are, everybody, if you've been ever responsible for teaching anybody anything ever, sometimes it's like my kids or something, I'm like, all right, do we know how to write our letter M's, right? To my 3-year-old, I got it. I've seen you write letter M's, practice. The next day I'm like, okay, let me go write some letter M's. I'm going to make, your bowl of cereal or whatever it is. And I come back and then they don't look like letter M's. I'm like, and so then I feel like Matt Capone, like, what are you doing? Throw my headset. I have to go get my headset and then throw it. I'm like, what are you doing? But I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then you start from the basics, or at least I do, right? I was like, what are you doing? Find the dotted line. Pencil goes in the dotted line. How do we write the M? Straight down, over, and then over, right? Like, and it's great when I hear my son talking to himself and saying that, kind of reminding the coaching points. But sometimes people are people, right? And they forget this and they forget that. And I don't know that you can always put it like somebody misses a tackle and you look at Matt Capone. Like, I mean, he's just a guy. He can't make the tackle for him. So you want an overall progress, right? You want a generalized movement to progress. But knowing that sometimes it's going to go back and forth. I see a lot of good in what he does. I personally like some of those blitzes that he brought. I thought I was like that was a good one. You got to get there. So again, you also have defensive line coaches to teach defensive line things. Linebacker coaches to teach that. Cornerback coach, DBs one. So there's a lot of cascading things there. It might be somebody that needs to be changed out, right? I don't know, whatever. But there was a couple times when
Special
we're right.
teams.
Yeah, we're right there. We're right there. We had the blitz lined up. We had a free runner right at McCown's face. He rolls out and gets to 5 yards, right? Like that's that stuff.
We've said that multiple times, right? We're right there, and there's glimmers of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Not glimmers of hope. There's a few plays every game where we're like, oh, that was excellent, great execution on the defensive line. I mean. But then 80% of the rest of the game, it's 700 yards of offense allowed. I don't see the progress like I did last year.
But is that our fault? Is that our fault for not recognizing what progress is going to look like on the defensive side of the ball? Right? Like you can't just get one player. There's no quarterback you can drop in that turns your mediocre offense into hey, that's pretty good. It doesn't work that way defensively.
We've talked about this, going back to last season where we said, okay, whole bunch of new guys. We got freshmen starting on defense. We knew it was not going to be great. We see them yelling at to each other on the field. We see them like, oh, what was this? We see guys getting wide ass open. It's learning pains. We start to see it progress and shore up throughout the season. But then we get to this season. And then we're still progressing. I see a lot of things that I like. I see execution. I see interceptions. But then we hit a wall, and we got a few stars on the team that are executing on an island, doing well, like Nelson, like Tejada, like Brown. But then that's it. As a team, as a unit, we're not progressing any further. We've hit a wall, and I don't think we can get past that wall without having a better coach come in and fix the defense.
Yeah, for me, I think that's a player thing, but I mean, like it's more like a talent. I agree. I don't. There's a lot of pieces to it, and I think any one of those things, like you risk knocking it over, and that's the thing I'm concerned about, is that we've tried that part, right? Switch them out. Right, that's a very Seth Littrell. People calling Eric Morris the new Seth Littrell. That was Seth Littrell's go-to,
I don't think it's the same thing.
Because but he was, he fired Refit, right? And then he fires was it Kosh? He brought Kosh in, and then he fired him, and like you have this churn, and he's like, oh, I can't find anybody, and he hires Phil Bennett, to kind of shore it up. I think all of that. It creates a system where you have just guys that just they're in between systems. You have guys that don't fit. I think hearing the same message for an extended point, like part of your playing career, can be a good thing because it becomes like second nature, right? Like you get it. Wazlowski said that he felt like they were more comfortable in the system in the offseason. You can see glimmers of that. They have been better in certain areas. The overall product, to your point, and I'm not arguing with this, has still been poor. But this defense does look better than last year's one. Like last year's one was just like, bro, it was terrible. This year, you're like, okay, I can see a little bit, but still 680 yards is not good. Like that's bad. And you were like, okay, well, there's an 83-yard run to seal the game. Game was over anyway. That was just whatever. That's maybe you don't count that. Okay, well, 600 yards still isn't good. Like 595 yards still not good. 300 yards passing in the first half is not good. Like there are things there. I think you fired Capone. Somebody's going to run a similar defense. It's going to be a 3 high. It's going to be a 3-3-5, a multiple defense, as they call it, whatever. You still need a pass rush. Are we getting that? Shipley has been good. He's not been great. Dawkins has been good and hasn't been great. Rod Brown has been good, not great. Right, that's your starting defensive line. Valea, solid, not great. There's a couple times we have him getting thrown into our defensive backfield. That's not great. Wazlowski, he's done some good. He's a heady player, but you can see, he's not gonna go sideline to sideline and chase down, a speedy dude, and he's not super strong where you can just drop him into the line and support there. You called that out a couple times. So who do we have? Jaylen Brown, he's solid linebacker, but he's not a game-changing linebacker that we can see. Same thing with Witter. Same thing with, who am I thinking of? Chavez Brown. Like, he's been solid, but there's not been anybody you're like, oh, man, look at that guy making plays. That's not there. So, to me, that's, you can scheme up whatever you're going to do, but you need somebody that's going to make a play. That's somebody that changes the game. I don't know we have that.
Who's in charge of that?
Yeah, and I get that. That's the point, is that, like, so if you hire somebody else, it's recruiting, right? But then, like, Eric Morris, everybody else, turns it around and is like, well, whose fault it is? Aldo, because he hadn't give us, $1 million so I can go get one of these dudes. And, like, okay, so ultimately, it's all my fault, that I didn't fill up the bag enough so we can get a game-changing linebacker. And, sure, whatever. I'll take the blame, I guess. But that's where it is, and that's the part where I'm like, well, look, I don't know that we have a lot of money overall in the program and the NIL and stuff to make to absorb the risk of swinging and missing real hard, right? Like, we do that once, you get once, and that's the part where, like, Eric Morris, I think he has to think about it a lot, is that you're ending year 2 and everybody hates your defensive coordinator. So you can change it out, but you get no more, right? Like, you can't be like, okay, this one was not good, but the next one's going to be great. You don't get another hire there. It's the same way with, like, the AD. Like, maybe you can fire the head coach once, but after a while, everybody's like, who hired this AD in the first time? Who hired the head coach in the first place, right? The athletic director.
Right. I get what you're saying, right? And if we compare it to Seth Luttrell, he had a great first, or all things considered, a solid first season, right? 5 wins, bowl game.
Yeah.
And then the next year, he turns it up, right? What was it? 8 wins, 9 wins, whatever. And he goes on a streak of a surprise championship appearance. We knew we had no business being there, but it was exciting that we did that with what we had. Don't feel like we're headed in the same direction yet. For whatever reason, right? You can say that we turned over 77, but when Seth Luttrell first came in, same situation, right? Where he had 2 months or 3 months to build a whole roster, and mask some of these deficiencies here and there. Eric Morris is doing the same thing. We started off 5-1. He was able to mask those deficiencies well, but we're stuck in a rut where we're not getting outside of a comfort zone of play calling or execution, whatever that may be. And the defense is not doing anything to progress, right, to help us get past that hump and win 1 or 2 more games out of that 4-game losing streak. It makes sense to have lost to Tulane. It makes sense to have lost to Army. Both great teams. Memphis we just shit the bed on that one. That one was bad. And then this one was the worst performance out of those 4, in my opinion. Yeah, Texas Tech was
definitely. Yeah, so I mean, just to back you up here, like, the Texas Tech game was embarrassing in the way that they lost, right? Like, nobody really expected us to beat them, but we're like, wow, that was embarrassing. We look like we don't belong on the field with them. The loss to Memphis, to me, that was like, okay, we were right there. We had to lead a couple times. We just got to shore a little this and that up, and like, we were 1 play away. Like, we could have tied the game, right? And you're like, oh, we allowed a lot of rushing yards, whatever the case may be. Memphis is a solid team. They're expected to win the league or compete for the league. We're right there. Army The Tulane game, we're like, what are we doing? Our run defense looks terrible. Army was like, okay, what's going on with the offense, right? Hey, I thought that was supposed to be a strength. And this game was like, what are you doing? Like, the offense looks terrible, and the defense did not look great. That's really what it is. We needed the offense to play at like the offense can range from like an A-, maybe B+, to like a C. The defense, I think, the best we're going to play. I don't think anybody's like, oh, A+, turnovers and sacks all day. It's like, all right, we're going to allow some things. It's going to max out at like at a B-, maybe. C+.
So back to your other point about if we lose the defensive coach, we might lose players. I mean, I think that's the same thing happens if you keep a coach and you lose the locker room, you lose the morale, you go on a streak of you continue this losing streak. So if you keep the coach, you lose trust in the head coach making the right decisions. You want a change, you're going to lose players, you're going to lose folks. If you make the change with the defensive coordinator, you lose players. You take that risk. That's part of it. But if you bring in the right guy, then he's going to bring in the right players to fit that scheme.
Yeah, you hope. I would say this. Like, I think right now, because all that to me is like off-season stuff. I think right now, last 2 games of the season, I think you got to, as the head coach, right? Eric Morris is ultimately responsible for all of this. You got to say, look, whatever we're talking about ego, right? Do you want to win, or do you want to win your way, right? That's the real question. It's like Eric Morris. Everybody respects your offense. They think you're a good coach. They think you're a good, we talked every week about, oh, you coach up Cam Ward. Cam Ward. Right? Okay, here's the thing. You need to, right now, coach up Chandler Morris. That's what you need to coach up. That's the guy you need to get to play well. Doesn't matter if he looks like Baker Mayfield. He looks like Baker Mayfield in Cleveland right now, right? We need the Baker Mayfield, a little bit Tampa Bay, Oklahoma winning, Heisman Trophy winning Baker Mayfield. We don't need this guy throwing interceptions and making terrible decisions, right? Coach of this guy. The offense needs to be scoring. Like that three series streak where we scored touchdowns. That's what we need. We need the South Alabama offense version of North Texas. That needs to be fixed and either clean up. He says every week, we got to clean this up. We got to be better. Clean it up or change the way you're playing, calling the plays, right? Slow it down. Like, maybe you're like, wow, but we're best at this one. Yeah, right now you're not best at anything. You're very terrible offensively, right? It's not good. You're relying on our converted wide receiver to scamper for 79 yards. Yeah. And you know what? We have seen this at North Texas. That's what we did with Lance Dunbar. We're like, well, look at this terrible offense. We give it Lance Dunbar and he scored a touchdown, right? That was our whole offense. Like, hopefully he can break one. That was it. Maybe he can break one. That was our game plan. So handball to Lance and then question mark, please score touchdowns. That's in this moment. That's what we need. We need to play complementary football. We need to be slower on offense. Treat it a little bit, be a little bit more precious about every play instead of like, let's go. Let's care about this play right now. Let's think about it. Why? But we're best when we're on tempo, when we're on cheetah speed. Yeah, we also just hurry up and throw an interception. Like, forget all of that. Let's be super deliberate. Let's be a little bit like Army, right? We'll figure out what we're gonna do. We can huddle. We don't have to worry about the signals or anything like that. Chandler Morris doing the thing, trying to call the plays. Get in a huddle. I don't care. Get in a huddle. Talk to everybody. Hey, you gotta draw it up for them. Hey, Conrad, you're gonna run 5 yards. And then do it, and then settle in. You guys, you're gonna cross. Do it like the Sandlot. Call it out, right? Be very slow. Walk to the line of scrimmage. Let's take the full 40 seconds to run a first down play. And you're like, why are we doing this? It's like so that way we can reset our brains and know how to do things. That's gonna help the offense. That'll help the defense. And then special teams. I don't know what you could do there. Like, we gotta fix that. What's going on? It's 2 weeks. 3 weeks in a row we've had special teams mistakes, either like an onside terrible something, a muff punt, like this one, just missed catch in there. Now all those are individual things, but it's still a bad thing, right? UTSA jumped out to a 14-point lead, and then it was about to be 21, but for a heroic 4th and 1 stop, right? Shout out Matt Camponi, came up twice, got an interception there too, He doesn't care if you don't like him.
He ran onto the field and caught that interception himself.
Yeah, you know what? You know what? His bank account. It doesn't feel shame. So I think we're coming to the end of this. We kind of went a little bit long. I think thanks everybody for watching on the Instagram live. We're also on the YouTube one. I think there's like one person on there. Like, we'll try to do this a little bit more. I think for the big games, it's kind of hard to you saw how many buttons I had to click. There's at least 4 buttons. Yeah, one button. It's hard out here. What am I, Matt Capone? You know, I can't do everything.
I can do one thing.
I feel like Chandler Morris right now. What? Throw to who? The other team? Oh, our team. Their team? Our team? Their team? Which one? Yeah, that's funny. I will say this as we wrap up. That whatever coaches do start to get annoying when you lose, when you're losing. Like, I had no opinion about Eric Morris's play calling thing. But when you're down 14 and they cut to him and he's like looking at his little paper there, I'm like, I hate whatever you're doing, man. I just
For me, with Latrell, it was his walk. Like,
yeah, he's kind of like leaning.
Roll.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he's a big boss man. He's a big wrestling fan.
We're down 21.
Running back.
We're down 21.
Quit walking, coach. Dang it.
Yeah, go for some strolls before the game, right? Figure out some plays. Now's not the time to stroll up and down. Yeah, I mean, it's the funny part. It's just whatever your coach does when you're losing just looks like the stupidest thing, and you just hate it. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I had zero opinion of him calling plays. I was like, when we're scoring, we have 50 points. I'm like, he's thinking of some new plays. We're going to score again. But now I'm like, just throw that paper away, man. Just whatever.
Fill out your Sudoku.
Yeah, like, just, what you got there? The crossword puzzle? Find some plays. Erase all the screens, dude. We don't need no more screens. All the 4th down plays, just big thick marker through them and just kick a field goal on it. Right? Do that one. Yeah. Thanks to David Augustine on Instagram. David Augustine 414. Right. You know, when David Augustine, when he was a kid, you know, he was thinking, it's like, what's going to make me famous one day? You know, he's thinking about all the things. He didn't know it was going to be his Instagram handle, commenting on the very famous, the big, super famous We Mean Green Nation podcast, Saturday morning edition show. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done. I have to find the right way to do it. I'm going to stop the live first.
In more ways than one, I think.
Like, for the season. We're it's over. Do you think we're gonna go to a bowl? Do you think we're gonna go to a bowl?
We can beat Temple.
There you go. All right, let me see. Pause that one. What other one is running right now? This.